I just realized it said I don't need to write it down, and I think it'd be a lot more well fleshed out if I wasn't reading off a paper. So I'm just gonna kind of roughly read it. I'll move my mouse so you guys wanted to see that. My family story. So many would disagree that I had a decent childhood, but I think I would disagree. Something that really stuck around me was watching people stand up for me. And to paint a picture, I was a pretty small kid. I was a really small kid. At the start of high school, I weighed about 83 pounds. And then at the end of high school, I weighed 93 pounds. I was I was tiny. And I was so used to other people standing up for me. My brother was someone who was very seen as very stubborn, and I didn't view him that way. You know, he just stood up for himself, and I wasn't the person to really stand up for myself. I would always try to avoid conflict and let kind of time pass, and hopefully it get better. But he didn't view it like that. He was stand your ground, kind of, stand what you stand for kind of thing. And he was my only brother that really stood up. I mean, he's my only brother, but he was one that stood tall for me. And that includes also my mom. My mom also stood very tall for me. Now, when I was younger, my mom, she would come home and she'd be like, "Don't tell anybody, or don't bother your dad. He had a rough day. Keep your head low." We already knew that, but when you're in that environment, you just kind of get used to it. And it was a very that was a very tough time in our life, but in reality, it wasn't a rough childhood. Now, what would happen was eventually, around when I was, I think, 8, 7, 8, my parents got divorced, and I was devastated, as every little kid is. But it's not because you just don't realize what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I remember when they got divorced, my mom got nothing. She didn't get one of the 4 cars. She didn't get any money in the joint account. She didn't get any of the business that my dad had owned. She pretty much had a camera and some photos of the kids, of us, and that was it. And so she was fortunate enough to have Uncle James, her brother James, offer his house to her, and that happened for 2 years. We lived in his house for 2 years. The thing was, is it was out in Phoenix, about an hour and 10 minutes away. But her mom didn't want us to pull us out of school or switch schools because she knew that we had close friends at our schools. So she did the hard decision, and she decided to drive us to school every morning, which was tough because my brother was in 0 hour football, which started at 5:45 ish, right around there. So we have to leave at 4:20 every morning. We'd wake up, I'd grab my brown blanket and my pillow, and we'd get in the Hyundai Sonata, and we just start driving, And in the Hyundai Sonata, I remember laying down in that back seat, and you think it'd be all cozy sleeping there, until that belt buckle just stabbed into your ribs. That always sucked. But other than that, everything else was great. You wouldn't believe it because you're getting up so early and you're driving so long. But I finally got to meet my mother. After all those years, my mom hadn't really been able to be herself around my father. And so I really got to get to know my mom over that time. You know, my brother would get dropped off at football at 5 o'clock, whatever, 4:30, 5:45. We would have so much time between then and then. Sorry, one sec. We'd have so much time between then and junior high, because junior high starts at like 9ish, right around there. So my mom would go get us Wendy's every morning, and I would get my biscuits and gravy, and God, Dad, I love my biscuits and gravy. And we listen to John Jay and Rich every morning, and we would wait for War of the Roses to go on, right? And War of the Roses was this thing where pretty much they wait for someone, or they set this thing up, giving out free flowers, and who would you like to give the flowers to? And then they see if it was cheating or not, right? And me and my mom just loved that. I'd be there eating my Wendy's, listening to John Jay and Rich, and my mom would spray my hair with a spray bottle because I have bedhead, and then she would comb it out, and it was just so nice. And she would drop me off at school. I'd go through my day, and then we'd drive back. And at my Uncle James's house, I had a little TV in my room for the first time, and I would go on channels I probably shouldn't have been on, like Comedy Central. I loved South Park. And on the drive back home, most days, I'd throw on South Park, because my mom would let us listen to anything, right? And even though she would let us listen to anything, she would die laughing at the most raunchy jokes. God, it was so funny. Because, you know, you never guess her to have the most raunchy humor ever. And it was just so much fun getting to do all of that. We would get home, and, you know, late at night she'd go, you guys want to go to Circle K, get some snacks? You know, you can get your Mountain Dew Voltage, Noah. I'd be all about it. You know, it was, some people would say I had a rough childhood, but I loved my childhood. Thank you for listening.